There are two main political parties in the United States today. The one party, the Republican Party, flies the American flag and believes that all men are created equal and have the same God-given inalienable rights afforded to all of its citizens. The other party, the Democrat Party, flies the rainbow flag and fights for special rights for homosexuals and transgenders to make them a preferred class within our society. Both parties have pledged allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Democrats lied and have openly admitted that their allegiance is to their party. They are dedicated to fundamentally changing the country for which our flag stands. All of our elected representatives have solemnly swore that they would support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that they would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. But the Democrats attack the Constitution continuously. One example is their call to end the Electoral College, which would destroy states' rights, making rural voters slaves to the easily manipulated masses that populate our cities. One party, the Republican Party, made ending child and sex trafficking a priority. They strengthened our borders and protected our citizens from the dangerous drugs from flowing across our borders. They cut down the numbers of unvetted illegal immigrants that subject our citizens to disease, violence, terrorism, and loss of employment opportunities. And these undocumented, unvetted, illegal immigrant border jumpers overwhelm law enforcement, medical, and housing resources. The Republicans work to reduce the tax burden on the American citizens, and the border is an example of where their policy matters. One party, the Republican Party, nominated a man with a proven record of protecting America, supporting our allies, and keeping America out of wars. He gave our country respect in the world. The Republican Party nominated a man who stands for the people's freedom and, by all accounts, previous to his political career, was a generous man who helped multitudes succeed in business. When he became president, Trump revealed the corruption prevalent in our government in Washington, D.C. And so now, by our government in Washington, D.C., he is both feared and hated by those who would take our freedom and deliver us all into a prison of mediocrity, where getting ahead will come only from government tyranny and dishonesty. The Democrats are fighting to create a country of tyrants and crooks. They are close to having enough voters to end our republic through identity politics. One party, the Republican Party, nominated a man who defends the Constitution and our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. The other party, of course, the Democrat Party, nominated a woman who promises to immediately weaken the Second Amendment, and her party is dedicated to remove gun rights from American citizens. If you support and defend the Constitution of the United States, you will affirm that all men are created equal and all have the same inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words can be found within the Declaration of Independence, which states the principles on which our government and our very identity as Americans is based. A person who supports and defends the Constitution of the United States speaks of respect for the individual and the individual liberty and individual property rights that are keys to our freedom and are laid out in our founding documents. You cannot have freedom without respect for the individual's right of self-determination, without which we are slaves to a tyrannical government. Kamala Harris, the standard bearer for the Democrat Party, does not talk of equality. She speaks of equity. Equity of outcome is the same worn-out promise coming from every communist dictator that has ever existed. It turns out that equity of outcome that Kamala Harris speaks of produces a society where the power of the government steals from the hard workers and the producers and the entrepreneurs. Basically, everyone who supports the society. And they redistribute the hard-earned wealth of those workers to anyone they see fit after taking their cut. The only people who benefit and are allowed to improve their lives are those in charge of the government. The government says what the citizens can do, how much money they can earn, where and when they can go, and what they must do. Those supporting Kamala Harris and her Democrat Party are committing to producing a horrendous totalitarian government, whether they know it or not. Her policies will centralize power in an iron-fisted federal government, and it's been done before, and it is happening plain as day. The communists already have the mainstream media under their thumb. They are already censoring speech, and they are already using the Justice Department to pervert justice and imprison their political opponents, while releasing hardened criminals back into the society even after they have committed horrendous crimes. The Democrats, including Kamala Harris, fought for law enforcement to be defunded and succeeded in many cities, and many have reversed this policy after horrible results. The Democrats, including Kamala Harris, supported Black Lives Matter rioters, and Kamala raised a bail fund to get the rioters out of jail ASAP to continue rioting. Citizens were killed. Here's Kamala Harris, June 2020. Quote, "Here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. This whole movement is about rightly saying we need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priorities, what we have had for generations now, and defunding public schools." Unquote. Now, since then, she has backpedaled and says she didn't support defunding the police. But she was sure making an argument for it back in 2020. School budgets rarely, if ever, get defunded. Kamala Harris has endorsed Biden's attack on the Supreme Court, attempting to change the Constitution to weaken the court's ability to stop the Democrats' endeavors to pass unconstitutional law. Instead of supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States, she is all for tearing it apart for political power. Okay, here's a headline from March 24, 2021. Quote, "Biden taps VP Harris to lead response to border challenges." That's from the AP News. The Democrats now claim that she wasn't in charge of protecting our border. Since 2021, over 9 million illegal immigrant border jumpers entered America. Kamala Harris and her Democrats think they can distance her from her inaction and just flat out lie about it. Many Democrat voters close their eyes and ignore the lies. Democrat lies have no end. The truth is that Kamala Harris was tasked with the border, and she did exactly what the Democrats wanted. The Democrats under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to dilute the U.S. population for their own political power. Trump made a lot of progress putting up the southern border wall, and the Biden-Harris regime stopped construction immediately upon taking office, and they sold off materials that were needed to finish the wall. Immediately upon taking office, the Biden-Harris regime shut down the Keystone XL pipeline and eliminated 11,000 good-paying American jobs. And then they suspended oil and gas leasing on federal lands. They delay permits for energy infrastructure, and they have drained our strategic petroleum reserves, compromising our energy and national security. They have enriched foreign governments like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Venezuela, and have emboldened Putin with Nord Stream 2, and seriously has made the United States of America a laughingstock around the world. Here's another headline from April 30th, 2021. Quote, Biden terminating border wall construction contracts. President Joe Biden is canceling further construction of the wall along the U.S. and Mexico border, the Department of Defense announced. Unquote. That's from Politico, a left-leaning news organization. There are many examples of serious crimes that were already perpetrated by the criminal illegal aliens that the Biden-Harris regime invited into our country, and many innocent Americans have paid the ultimate price. The Democrats show nothing but a callous disregard for these victims, and there is a continuing threat to every man, woman, and child who live in these United States from these criminals. Ever since the Obama administration, Democrats have been arming Iran. Here's a headline from the past. Quote, U.S. sent plane with $400 million in cash to Iran. Unquote. That was CNN, August 4th, 2016. The Obama administration secretly arranged a plane delivery of $400 million in cash, empowering Iran to sponsor terrorism and revitalize Iran's program to acquire nuclear weapons. And support for Iran continues. News from the U.S. Senate. Quote, Biden administration is delaying arms shipments to Israel to undermine our ally. Unquote. June 20th, 2024. Democrats need the votes from their pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-Israel arm of their party and will do anything for power. Kamala Harris doesn't speak out against radical Islamic terrorism. To the contrary, giving a speech while attending a Los Angeles mosque in 2016, she taught the Muslims rhetorical strategies against Americans. She sided with the Muslims when she used the following, "It's we against them" argument. Quote, we must have the courage to object when they use that term radical Islamic terrorism, which ignores how Muslims have overwhelmingly been the greatest victims of terror. Unquote. I have no clue how many Muslims were in the World Trade Center on 9/11/2001, but I am pretty sure they were not the greatest victims of the day. It seems that Kamala Harris is actually encouraging more illegal immigration from Islamic nations when she tells them we must also have the courage to reject that term illegal alien. After all, who is the we and the them when speaking to Muslims at a mosque? All the Muslims applauded Kamala Harris, and it is pretty plain she won their vote right then and there. Ever since the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, where 13 U.S. service members were needlessly killed and many more wounded, and hundreds of U.S. citizens left behind enemy lines, and gifting billions of dollars of military equipment to the Taliban, the U.S. under the Biden-Harris regime has been financing America's enemies. They claim it to be a mistake, but it looks purposeful. An investigation has revealed that the Taliban has been financed $239 million in U.S. aid in Afghanistan since 2021. Furthermore, the U.S. has sent $270 million to the West Bank and Gaza, financing the Palestinians in their war against Israel. They call it humanitarian aid. Kamala Harris and her Democrat Party keep calling President Trump a racist. For example, Trump called the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus the Chinese virus. They point at that Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway called the virus the Kung Flu. And the truth is not racist, and the truth is that the virus came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. This is the same Wuhan Virology lab that released the virus, and the same Wuhan Virology lab performing gain-of-function research, and the same Wuhan Virology lab that was funded by the United States National Institute of Health under the direction of Dr. Anthony Fauci. The Democrats are not concerned that their government financed gain-of-function research. at a Chinese laboratory where a virus that is estimated to have killed 17 million worldwide was developed. The Democrats don't mention that at all, but they mention that Trump is racist for calling it a China virus. Kamala Harris Democrats falsely accused Trump of wanting to cut Medicare, while they themselves cut Medicare Advantage funding 2 years in a row. The Democrat cuts to Medicare Advantage plans will force private insurers to reduce benefits, purge plans, and withdraw from some markets, leaving seniors with less choice and higher costs. Kamala Harris Democrats report drops in inflation time and time again, but a drop from 3.3% to 3% is not a drop in prices as they want you to believe. Keep in mind that there would be no inflation whatsoever if the government didn't spend money that doesn't exist. Inflation is the government stealing the value from the money. It is nothing but a tax. In the Trump years, the cumulative rate of inflation from 2016 to 2020 is 7.8%. Now, the cumulative rate of inflation from 2020 till 2024 happens to be 21.4%. So, over the Trump years, even while working with the Democrat Senate, Trump kept the inflation down to a little less than 2% per year. But during the Biden-Harris administration, inflation averaged over 5.25%. Now, take into consideration housing costs. At the end of the Obama administration in December 2016, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 4.2%. And after Trump in December 2020, it had fallen to 2.68%, and then 3 years later into the Biden-Harris administration, in December 2023, it was 6.82%, and today, August 6, 2024, the 30-year fixed rate is 6.75%. A family's house payments and their ability to own a home are affected terribly under Democrat policies. If we just take the principal and interest into consideration, without adding any of the other costs of home ownership, like property taxes, insurance, PMI insurance, HOA fees, or any of the other costs associated with home ownership, even this shows a huge difference. The following takes into consideration only the principal and interest of a $120,000 home after a 10% down payment. At the end of Obama's administration, at the 4.2%, the repayment of the money would have been $528.14. At the end of the Trump presidency, at the 2.685 percentage, it would only be $436.91 per month. Today, after the Biden-Harris policies, the payment would be $749. Now today, there is very few homes available at this price of $120,000. So in reality, it's easy to see how Democrat policies take many of the young people, first-time home buyers, right out of the market. Also, home ownership expenses are affected by higher taxes under a Democrat administration, and whether a family can afford the payments also depends on the cost of everything else: water, cooling and heating, food prices, etc. Crime rates increase insurance costs under Democrat light on crime policies. Democrat woke defund the police policy has destroyed many otherwise great cities like San Francisco, California, and New York, and Chicago, Illinois. Letting real criminals out onto the street and prosecuting only political competitors is wrong. Democrats are hoping for total anarchy so they can justify martial law and a military coup against the Republic in order to establish their communist paradise where they can run the show unencumbered by the United States Constitution. This is truly the only explanation for their activities.